Hey guys, I am coming in because John and I have been reading this book, The Obesity Code, and it's probably backwards on the screen, but it's by Jason Fung, and I'm sure you've heard me talk about him before. He is a doctor out of Toronto who treats like diabetic patients with kidney disease and that kind of thing, and he is helping people to reverse their diabetes through intermittent fasting and long fast, depending on what their health needs call for. But this book is kind of talking about the science behind the history of obesity and why, the reason why we have gotten fatter over the last 50 or 60 years. And in the course of reading this book, we came across a section that as we read it, I was like, a light bulb went off. And I thought, this is why bariatric patients have regained, or not 100% why, but I think it is a large factor in bariatric regain. So what he talks about is insulin resistance, and insulin resistance is why our bodies store more fat. It's like what causes people to have diabetes. It's when your body doesn't respond to the insulin the way it efficiently should, and your body produces more insulin. Insulin is the hormone that tells your body to store fat, and you just get fatter and fatter. And then you get diabetes, and then they give you insulin to control your sugar, and that makes you get fatter and fatter and fatter and sicker and sicker and sicker. Insulin doesn't actually solve diabetes. It actually tends to make it worse. It just keeps you from dying at the moment. But you can read all about that in the book and other things on the web, whatever. Plenty of documentation about that. But so what he was saying was, in this section that had the light bulb go off, was back in the 50s and 60s, people were eating carbs. People weren't, ever eating bread or potatoes or rice and pasta. And they, for the most part, were not obese. Like the vast majority of the country was not obese. But the difference, he said that with insulin resistance, there's two factors. It's what you eat and when you eat it. And if you're eating really super high sugary foods, yes, that's going to cause your blood to spike and require more insulin. But back in the 50s and 60s, they ate 3 meals a day. You had breakfast, you had lunch, and you had dinner. And you didn't eat between meals, and you didn't eat after dinner. Children weren't allowed to eat. There was no snacking, And so as time has evolved, we've gotten to where we eat constantly. And so what he showed was that at breakfast time, you would eat something like bacon and eggs, and your blood sugar would go up just a little bit, a smidge, and it would require a little bit of insulin. Your insulin would kick in, and then that would bring it back down. And then you'd have a fasting period from say 7 o'clock or 7:30 in the morning until noon. And then at noon, you would eat something, and your blood sugar would go up a little bit. Therefore, your insulin would go up a bit more than breakfast, because maybe you're having a sandwich. But you'd eat from 12 to 12:30, and then that would be it. And it would all come down, and you'd have another fasting period until maybe 6 o'clock in the evening when you'd have dinner. And then you'd eat from maybe 6 to 6:30, and then that was it. And you wouldn't eat anything again until, say, 7 o'clock the next morning. So there was another 12-hour fasting period. So that was the normal feeding and fasting, normal daily cycle. And now we've been taught over the last, 20 years that, you have to eat 6 meals a day. You have to keep your blood sugar elevated so that it all stays, your metabolism stays up here. And meanwhile, we're getting fatter and fatter and fatter. So if you keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity, right? So right now we're eating and we're coming down, and as soon as we come down, we're going back up. So we never get into a fasting period except for maybe overnight, and that might be from 11 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock the next morning. So it's just not long enough. So I was thinking, when we first have surgery, we are told we need to eat every 2 or 3 hours because we can't physically eat that much in any one sitting. And I agree with that. For the first several, maybe less than 6 months, we can't eat enough, so we have to eat more frequently. So we eat more frequently, and we train our bodies to eat 6, maybe 7, maybe even 8 times a day as bariatric patients. And it's tiny little bits So and it's way less than what we were eating before we had surgery. So the weight's falling off, and we're like, this is fantastic, this is great, da da da. Time goes on, you get past the 6-month period, past 9 months, past 12 months, and you can eat a little bit more in each of those 6, say, portions of food throughout the day. You're eating a little bit extra, and then maybe you start incorporating things that you didn't have before, like a few more carby things. And what I hear a lot, and I know I said it in my group of people who had surgery at the same time as me, and as I've seen people come behind me, they all say, you know, maybe like 12-month, 18-month, that my hunger returned. Well, maybe your hunger didn't really return because your stomach, like people think that their sleeve got stretched out or their pouch got stretched out and they could eat more, and that's what's causing hunger. But I don't think that's what's causing the hunger. I think what's causing the hunger is the incorporation of foods that trigger hunger, like sugar and carbohydrates, and the frequency of eating it. We've now trained our body to be hungry every 2 to 3 hours, and I was definitely in that phase until I started backing off and trying the fasting and cutting out, a first breakfast, a second breakfast, and to the point where I can fast now every other day. I can fast for 3 days, and the vast majority of the time I don't have hunger. I have no hunger. So it has nothing to do with my sleeve and the size of my sleeve, the capacity, and how sensitive it is, and what it likes and what it doesn't like. The hunger has nothing to do with that. The hunger has to do with hormones. And when you get your insulin in check and you keep your insulin low through only eating 3 meals a day, maybe even 2 meals a day, I don't think as bariatric patients we could go to 1 meal a day, but I'm probably going to do an experiment to try that out just to see. But I don't really, my hypothesis is that we as bariatric patients can't eat enough in 1 meal a day to keep our metabolism up. But 2 meals a day I think is totally reasonable. I'm doing 2 meals a day. I can easily get 1,200 to 1,500 calories in 2 meals a day. So I think one of the tools to prevent regain after bariatric surgery is once you get past the first, say, 6 months and you can start eating a little bit more, cut down to like 3 meals a day. Or phase it out, cut to 4 meals a day, then cut to 3 meals a day. As long as you're getting your protein in, let your body have a rest. Let yourself have fasting periods in between meals. And I still kind of struggle with it now in between lunch and dinner. Sometimes we'll get it's not a hunger, it's a desire to eat, because my brain has been so ingrained to eat every few hours. It's a habit. It's not a need, it's a habit. And if you can break that habit, I think you'll see less people have regain after bariatric surgery. It's something that needs to be explored. It's something that I believe. I could be wrong. Prove me wrong. Try it and see if it works or doesn't work for you. But I just thought, yeah. And then I see a lot of people too going back to the bariatric surgeon years after. And the bariatric surgeons, they are familiar with the bariatric surgery and the post-care immediately after. Their methods that work then are not going to work 2 and 3, 4 years out, because it's a different scenario. It's not post-operative care for a sleeve that is sensitive from being worked on. And they're just not familiar. It's a shame, but these doctors and these dietitians are not trained in this stuff. It's very rare, and most doctors don't know about it, and if they do, they reject it because it's not what they were taught in school. But it's working. And if you look at the results, if you go to, Dr. Fung has a whole clinic that's all he does. There's Dr. Gary Westman, and I think he's out of Duke, and his whole practice is just doing this, just training people doing keto and learning about their hunger cues and only eating when they're actually hungry. So give it a try. It's a suggestion. I really think I'm onto something with this. So let me know your thoughts. If you tried it, if it didn't work for you, why? I'm interested in the whole thing. So, all right, go out, guys. Make it happen.